Hi and welcome to the fifth and final instalment of this series of short videos on the Legion based announcements that came from Gamescom over the last week. Hopefully I'll have covered everything of interest by the end of this one regarding Blizzard statements and my commentary on them. In this videos I'll be tackling the last little bits, which are features relating to the content between launch and initial raiding. So the general route to raiding will be levelling up, making sure you complete major quest lines in each zone and getting to friendly with the appropriate reps, completing Suramar quests until you're friendly with that rep, unlocking world quests, completing Order Hall and class related quest chains, spamming dungeons, first normal, then heroic, finally mythic. Doing at least one mythic dungeon a week rewards you with a boatload of artifact power, and some sneaky EU types we're hoping to get a quick one in before our weekly reset of Wednesday. Unsurprisingly, Blizzard stated at Gamescom that this won't be possible as Mythic Dungeons won't open until the first reset of the week for that particular continent, so it's straight away for the US but not until a day later for EU. When raids do open up, so do Mythic Plus dungeons, and these are against the clock. It's not a tight check in the early levels, still Blizzard have acknowledged the issue with players skipping large parts of the dungeon and said that they've tried to tackle this in Legion. They said they couldn't prevent the Everbloom shortcut once it was spotted, for example, because it would knacker the leaderboards. But these don't exist in the same way for Legion, so they feel free to adjust during the expansion. They also acknowledge the capacity for Demon Hunters to get past obstacles. They have a double jump and Fell Rush can get them certainly much higher than other classes are able to. But they noted that you can't have an all Demon Hunter party because they don't heal. That being said, if you had a Swap Blaster, you could get the Demon Hunter to go up over the obstacle, Swap Blaster the healer, and then they could get back up over it themselves. So I'm going to guess either the obstacles they can get over wouldn't allow them to do that, or they're going to have to disable mechanics like that in those dungeons. I can't think of specific parts of the dungeons where this would be useful, I have to say, but just in case, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, if Blizzard could think of any, they would remove it anyway, wouldn't they? The idea of mass stealth or invisibility pots was said to maybe give you a choice between taking in lots of easy ads or fewer tough mobs, rather than a straight up circumventing the whole thing. Again, that would be a good thing. I personally don't like the idea in these sort of things of bypassing large sections of the dungeon. Given that some of the effects on keystones affect trash very strongly, I certainly would say it would be best if they prevented as many of these sort of tricks as possible. Now when it comes to the balance between dungeon and raid design, Blizzard said that in raids the focus is on the boss, the trash is just there for pacing. I'd go further and say that trash is essentially there so the officers can distribute loot and swap a few people in and out between bosses. It's also potentially there for the rest of us to shovel some food into our mouth, I mean take a sip of water to keep our brains hydrated. By contrast, you spend most of your dungeon time on trash. I suppose the key difference is you expect to progress on raid bosses, but not dungeon bosses. In fact, people get pretty shirty if someone even dies in a dungeon these days, let alone if the whole group wipes. In previous expansions, the race to be raid ready was purely on dungeon and crafted gear. In Legion, we have the added complication of developing our artifact weapon. Now, it'll be a long time before we can't spend any more artifact power on our weapon, and even if you want to develop multiple ones, which some people may not, but there will still be an end to it. However, Blizzard did state that there will always be a reason to acquire artifact power, and so there'll be something to do with it later in the expansion. We just don't know what yet. They did hint at raising the cap on traits, so you might be able to stack more points to make certain abilities more powerful. Hopefully doing so wouldn't mess up a path with someone still levelling their artifact at the time. It'd be a right arse to be 1 point away from a major trait, only to find you've got to go back and spend more on the minors before you can do it. I suppose what they could do is raise the cap without raising the required number of points to spend on a minor trait before moving on. They referred to artifact power as a nice consistent reward with no RNG, where you'd always feel up on the night. I guess this compares to previous expansions where you could spam dungeons all night and not get any upgrades at all, and even in WoD the garrison resources would be useless pretty quickly. Whereas in this system, if the same thing happens, at least you'll have more artifact power than you started out with. Even if it's not enough for a new trait in itself, it gets you closer to it, and so the night won't have been wasted in terms of your developing your character. Now finally, RPPM trinkets have changed for Legion. Previously, as long as the trinket wasn't on internal cooldown, it'd be a guaranteed proc with the first ability used in combat. This allowed DPS players to combine the power from the trinket proc with their pre-pot, major DPS cooldown and possibly heroism to belt out a massive amount of damage. You can see this on logs of damage done by raids at the start of fights compared to over the course of the entire fight. Blizzard said that the delta between the DPS of the first 30 seconds of a fight compared to the rest was too high. Delta referring to the mathematical symbol for difference, although I'm not sure why it's used conversationally, but there you are. Of course, this means that such trinkets will be hugely RNG now, much more so than before. Fortunately, most fights don't require you to front load damage in a really short window at the start of a fight, though some have in the past, and I'm not asked about ranking because, well, this will frustrate people trying to pass, I think. They also said that a cooldown was added preventing you use 2 on-use trinkets at the same time, though this isn't a new thing really, that's been the case in the past. And I think that pretty much covers all the relevant information, with the possible exception of raids meshing together that I want to pick up in a separate vlog a bit later. If you haven't seen the others in the series yet and you're interested in those, then you can go and check those. They're all in the same playlist. I hope you found the series interesting as always. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. And until next time, I'll see you later.